Okay, in this video we're going to do a multi-layer bridge from tooth number 18 to tooth number 20. And a multi-layer would be CAD-on or Vita Rapid Layer, anything where you're going to design the bridge full contour and then split it into a framework and a veneering structure over the top. So the first thing we're going to do is click Bridge Restoration. We're going to designate our abutment teeth, so it's going to be crown. We're going to do these in biogeneric individual. You must click multi-layer, and then we'll click the two abutment teeth, which are at tooth number 18 and tooth number 20. Now you'll always know that you do this correctly if you have a red for both veneering structure material and framework material. If you don't see two materials here, then you mess something up and you probably forgot to hit the split. So the next thing we're going to do is designate the pontic. So we'll click pontic, biogeneric individual. We're going to make sure that the multi-layer is checked. Click tooth number 19. And our define restoration went from red to green, so we're set there. We'll go ahead and select the veneering structure materials. In this case, we're going to do Ivoclar Emax. That's what's going to go over the top. We're going to be doing a CAD-on, and for the veneering structure, it's going to be Ivoclar Emax Zircad. So once we select all our materials, everything's green. We can go ahead and take our images. I'm going to skip over that. It's just taking the upper, lower, and buccal bite. You're very familiar with that. And we'll go on to the model phase. Okay, so here in the model phase, I went ahead and already marginated the two abutment teeth, tooth number 18 and tooth number 20. That's pretty easy and standard. I didn't marginate the pontic yet because I want to show you something that you're going to have to make sure that you understand. Just like when we did the Maryland bridges, for those of you that watch those videos, you have to be very careful where you draw the diameter of the margin for the pontic. So we'll go ahead and click tooth number 19, the pontic, and we'll start to draw it. And you just need to be aware when you're doing multi-layer, you're splitting into these big, thick connectors between the pontic and the abutment. So you're going to want to make sure that the margin diameter where these connectors are going to be is very broad. Okay, so just be aware, and I know some of you guys have already had problems with getting the connectors too small, so make them pretty broad. You know, I might have overdone it a little there, but let's just call this good about right here. So we've got a broad connector here. If you draw it too small, there's no way that this will work. So the number one thing that you have to remember, very carefully draw your pontic bottom line so you have a very broad diameter pontic. So after we draw the margin, we'll obviously go to define the bridge insertion axis. When you define the bridge insertion axis as a whole, you're looking at it as a whole. Now this, we have other videos on this. This does not need to be altered at all. It looks very, very good. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. And since this looks good, I'm not going to actually alter the insertion axis individually either. We'll move forward to our parameters. Okay, so the parameters are also very, very important when you're coming to multi-layer. Notice we have tooth number 18, 19, 20. All have parameters. Even though it says apply for all, I always double check them all because it doesn't always work. So, you know, you can have your spacer set to whatever you want. Let's just keep it at 80 for now. You know, this is actually for the top layer, so let's move the spacer up to 110. Occlusal offset, again, we'll just keep this at -150. Proximal contact strength, for occlusal, I like it at -25 or -50. Now, the big important thing that you have to remember with multi-layer is you've got a lot of thicknesses. So when you're looking at a minimal thickness, for instance, now you've got a spacer for the framework, you've got a minimal thickness for the framework. Then you've got a spacer for the veneering structure and a minimal thickness for veneering structure. So all these different thicknesses really start to add up. So what I'm saying is that if you really want to do a multi-layer, you have to have a lot of thickness to the actual reduction. So you need a lot of reduction in order to do it. So as a starting point here though, I keep the minimal thickness radial and a minimal thickness occlusal for the abutments at the default, which you can see is 700. If I turn it on, it's 700. So I keep the minimal thickness radial, the minimal thickness occlusal, both at 700. Okay. Now if we move back to the bottom layer, this is the framework. It's often zirconia, so I like to cement zirconia, so I'm going to keep the spacer at 80. Now when we look at the minimal thickness radial, again, that's defaulted. I have that defaulted to 500. Occlusal, I keep that at 500 as well. Let's actually move that to 700 just to be safe. And the margin thickness I keep all the way at 300. Oftentimes you can lower it, but let's keep it at 300 for now just to get a little bit of a thickness there. And so we'll move on to tooth number 19. This is the Pontic. We want to check all these before we calculate. We'll keep the spacer for the overlay at the top at 110. Offset minus 150. Now we start to go to the minimal thickness. We're going to keep these both. I like to keep them both at 800. Okay. Remove undercuts. Okay, and everything else is okay. Lastly, we'll go back to tooth number 20. Let's get our spacer on the top layer to 110. Occlusal offset to minus 150. Minimal thickness is good at 700. 700. The bottom layer is at 80. We're going to move these to 7. Oh, sorry. We're going to keep the radial at 500. We're going to move the occlusal to 700. And we're going to keep the margin thickness just defaulted. Once you get all these different parameters done, we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And we're going to get our initial proposal for just a straight biogeneric bridge. Okay, so here you can see a biogeneric bridge, a very nice biogeneric bridge, by the way. As far as proposal, this goes back to the model axis and insertion axis that we discussed in other videos. So I'm going to stop video 1 here on the multi-layer, and in part 2 of this video we're going to actually go through how to correctly split this. So this went ahead and showed you how to set it up, how to get the correct parameters, and then in the next video we'll go ahead and show you how to split it.